All right, fellas. I'm with Mike Brown today. Excited about this conversation for a couple reasons. One is that as I record this, our team is talking about the wealth and legacy pillar within Front Row Dads, which we focus on in January and February. And throughout the course of the year, every 2 months, we rotate through another pillar. There's 6 throughout the course of the year, some of them more obvious, obviously parenting, marriage, and then we have wealth and legacy and business and emotions and health and all of that. This topic is one that I have avoided in the past. I kind of grew up at this blueprint, this belief that if you had a lot of money, you were greedy. You didn't share it with people. I have a lot of these blueprints, and being broke or being poor was a sign of being a good human. You're like, see how good I am? I give all my money away. I don't do things for money. So many blueprints that stunted my growth in this area. I've addressed a lot of that, but I'm still working on those things. Even as a 48-year-old man with 2 children, married for 16 years now. The truth is this is an area where I have a lot of room to grow. And so I love being around guys like Mike, not only because wealth is something that he can speak to. He's created it in his own life. As an angel investor, he founded and exited an 8-figure company. But when you dig into his bio, you learn cool things like he was a fighter jet pilot for the U.S. Navy. Interestingly, my dad was in the Navy, Mike, for 27 years. He was
Oh, wow.
he was in the supply corps. But we did have a guy in our neighborhood where I grew up that flew the F-14. I think that's when I was growing up. My friend's dad flew the F-14, which is really cool. And anyway, I'm excited to talk with Mike. We have mutual connections and friends. He, of course, is a dad. He has 2 children, and his partner now, Claire, they got together in October of 2022. So kind of a newer relationship, which is exciting. I love what you wrote. You said, I'm 100% dad 50% of the time. And I think that's really, really cool. And we can talk a little bit about your family dynamic and how you co-parent and work and balance your life. Who knows where we're going to end up today in the conversation. I wrote down a bunch of questions as I was sitting in the sauna today, thinking about this conversation. But welcome, Mike. So glad to be with you, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Jon. I appreciate it. And if there's one thing I like talking about more than wealth, it's parenting and being a dad. So I'm really excited to be here.
And I love the conversations that end up talking about both, because one of the things that I really care about is how we talk about money with kids, or how even growing up with cash, like if your parents are, I don't know how we define it other than like, if they're well off, if you can do a lot of things, if you have nice things in your proximity, you can eat healthy foods, you're doing pretty well in this world. And if a kid grows up with a lot of comforts, can that bite them in the ass because they're not, because you hear the story all the time of a person who doesn't grow up with a lot. They got hungry, they wanted to chase success, and some of that's a real gift to them in their ambition.
Yeah, I love that you've already kind of touched on the core of my work, which my philosophy is, if information was all that we needed to be wealthy, there'd be a lot more rich people.
Yeah.
But there is a reason we don't take all of the good advice out there, right? And that's because we have these subconscious patterns, or what I call money stories, that shape how we relate to money, and in many ways become limitations. So you talked about one of yours, right? Which is, and this is a very common one, money is the root of all evil. Therefore, rich people must have exploited someone, or they got that by being dishonest, or some version of, you can't be a good person if you're rich, right? And a lot of us who grew up lower middle class or poor, have that ingrained to us from a very young age. And so a lot of what I do is just help people examine where those stories come from and how to rewire those for true wealth and success.
Yeah. And I thought, at the end of the day, if I was in a position of whether I was broke and claiming ownership of that, why that was good, could I play the game of like, let me be really wealthy and see what I would do with it all, right? Because I could do all sorts of things, but I'd rather have that option than no option.
Totally. And look, there's all kinds of stories, and one that I hear, really commonly as well. I don't need that, or I don't need that level of wealth. I'm happy where I am. But the fact is, we are all already living above our needs, right? Like
Totally.
everyone has our basic needs covered. So any level of luxury that you have in your life is a want. So it's paradoxical to even say like, I don't need that much, because you already have more than you need. So if that's the case, why not go out and create more? Because wealth is really just it's a measure of solving problems in the world, being in service to others, and creating value. So it's just keeping score. And then where it gets fun is using wealth as a tool to serve our values.
Yeah. I love going back into your childhood here for a minute, Mike, and talking about, and oftentimes I'll open it up to hey, where was your dad a warning or an example in your life? It'd be interesting if you want to go down the path of like, where was your dad a warning or an example in the form of wealth creation? But again, take it wherever you want. If there's a story you're more compelled to share, but that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, for sure. So, my dad is the kindest man that I've ever met. And I just have such immense respect for who he is as a human, but that wasn't always the case. And when I was young, I was a very driven individual. I wanted to build and create. And my dad was a engineer. He worked for a big company, and I kind of didn't understand. I didn't understand my dad, right? Like I had this entrepreneurial drive, and my dad was kind of more of an employee mindset. And the other thing is that like I said, he was an incredibly kind man, but I watched him and my mom fight every night of my life, and they fought about one thing: money. Yeah. And so for me as a young child, I created a story that I never wanted to be like that. So I'm going to have enough money that I will never have to worry about money or fight with my partner about money. And as a child, that's a really useful core wound to have. Like that really set me up for success throughout the rest of my life, and kind of was at the core of building, going to the Naval Academy, flying jets, getting out, starting and selling a company. Like all of that was at the core, but it also became a limitation. And so after my exit, and really even starting long before, like I had a very freewheeling relationship with money. I didn't respect money. I had this very easy come, easy go mentality. And what I learned, later on now through a lot of personal development work is this story of, I'm going to have so much money, I'll never have to worry about it. I equated worrying about money with being responsible. So it really created a lot of self-sabotage in my life of, if I have money in my bank account, I've got to get it away from me as soon as possible, whether that's buying things, but more often like investing in new projects or starting new companies or whatever it is. So it all is under this shroud of success, but at the core, it's self-sabotage.
Yeah. I heard you talk about that a little bit, the self-sabotage piece. And I mean, is there anything else you can layer in on that? Because when I heard you talk about this at first, it was like, I feel like there's a lot of blind spots for me in self-sabotage. I feel like this is an area I haven't explored. Do you feel in any way that right now, are you still dealing with elements of self-sabotage in your life at this level with all of your awareness and all of your growth?
Every day. I mean, this is the never-ending journey, right? And there's a quote that I live by, which is, the wiser we become, the less wise we feel. And at almost 43 years old, I certainly feel a lot wiser in my 40s than I did in my 30s, but there's still so much to learn, and I take that opportunity with gratitude. But yeah, I mean, at the core of the science of self-sabotage, especially for driven individuals, is that in stressful situations where other people would react with a fight or flight response, a driven personality type, we actually find calm in that chaos, and we go into hyper focus mode, and that allows us to elicit high performance again, which is a really useful genetic adaptation, right? That allows us to build companies and create wealth and be high level athletes and high performers. So it serves us really well until we're safe. And when we start to get to a place of stability, a lot of times we don't know how to elicit that high performance without a stressor. So what do? We go out and create chaos. We throw a wrench into things.
Totally.
And so for me, traditionally it was, oh, I've got $1 million in my bank account. Let me go invest in 10 companies real quick. So I'm back to zero. So now I have to motivate myself to work again, because otherwise I'm just going to be lazy, right? So we create these external stressors or these artificial stressors in order to stay motivated. And if we don't learn to create from a place of calm, we're going to stay in that cycle. So there's no amount of money that we can earn that's going to keep us safe from that.
Dude, when I was a kid and I smoked cigarettes, I remember I got to the point where I was like, I think I'm quitting, or I think I'm starting up so I could quit again. I would literally I'd have a mission of quitting. People give you so much praise when you quit, gives you something to talk about. You're like, I'm quitting. Having a challenge to overcome, I would almost restart it so I could beat the thing again. And I've had somebody, it was maybe like a year ago, a good buddy of mine was like, I think you and Tatiana, my wife, I think you guys fight just so you can make up. And I wonder, how many times in my life do I create the chaos so I have purpose? And I think that there's another way to get into that, right? You just go out and pursue your purpose with such passion. You'll probably naturally step into chaos. You don't need to recreate it intentionally. It's probably going to come your way.
Yeah, there's already plenty, right, for all of us. And but this doesn't just happen in business. This happens in our personal lives too. So as soon as we get to that place of stability, we go adopt a new puppy, we go have a new kid, we decide to remodel the house, and
You're describing my current life.
Yeah, exactly. It seems like good decisions, and maybe it is a good decision long term, right? But it's injecting that chaos. And a lot of times, one of the things that I actually like to ask myself is, am I doing this because I really want to, or am I doing this because I'm bored?
Yeah. And how do you know what's healthy with that and what's not? Because on some way, even talking about our mutual friend, Dan Martell, who talks about building businesses in a way that you're like, I'm going to break this. I'm going to build the marketing team so it breaks the sales. I'm going to build the sales team in such a way that the marketing needs more leads. To what degree is it healthy of the tear down the muscle concept, facing adversity, strengthening, tempering the iron, if you will? How do you see the difference of those two?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's kind of back to what you said. Natural problems are going to occur if we're following the process, right? Like organizations break at $1 million, $5 million, 10. This is well documented. So
totally,
as long as you are disciplined in following the playbook and the process, enough shit's going to break that you're going to have to go fix it at some point anyway, right? And what happens is, I see this constantly with entrepreneurs, and I'm as guilty as anyone, is we get to this safe operating margin, we get to a certain level, and then it's, hey, let's go lease a new office and fill it with a bunch of new employees. Let's fire our marketing team. Let's redo our funnels. Let's launch a new product. All of these things ultimately are distractions. And one of the things that I think is most important when it comes to wealth building is that distraction is the greatest destroyer of wealth. And conversely, focus is the greatest tool to building true wealth. So if I see an entrepreneur who is so bored with their business, they get up every day, the processes are dialed, the employees are autonomous, they've got everything dialed, they're bored to tears, that person is on the verge of true wealth, right? And so it's just being able to stay.
That's fascinating. Yeah, man, that is so true. In fact, when I was just talking to Dan an hour ago, I was sharing with him our weekly revenue numbers, and it's gone up every week for the last 5 weeks. And his comment to me was, because you're focused on it. That's what, and I was like, yeah, 100%. I'm just giving it more energy. So it's growing. And I think it's a beautiful thing about what we focus on that in that vein, thinking of your life as a father and as it ties to wealth, where do you feel that you're winning right now? And where do you feel that you're questioning maybe some of the systems? Where are you most challenged with your children?
Yeah, I believe being a dad is my highest calling, and that overshadows entrepreneurship or coaching or business or investing or any of that other stuff. And ultimately, like, time is our only non-renewable resource. And so living in alignment means aligning your actions to your values. And so every day I am focused on, how do I align my actions to live my values? And, that for me looks like being 100% present with my kids when I'm with them. And so I got divorced in 2019, and it was, the hardest thing that I've ever gone through. And I was really scared, and the reason I was scared is because I was afraid of losing that time with my kid. We talk about 18, we have 18 summers with our kid, and all of a sudden I'm looking at 9. Realistically, when we look at the balance sheet, and that was really terrifying. But I had a conversation with my son at 25, right? So I'm doing a journey, and I have this conversation when he's grown up, and he asked me, he said, "Dad, why'd you stay?" And I look at him and I go, "For you, son." And his answer was, "How dare you put that on me?" Right. And so there's this idea, I think, that a lot of us are going to stay in an unhealthy marriage for the kids when we've never even asked them if that's what they want.
Wow.
And what I realized since is the best thing I can do for my kids is not, try and shackle together some sort of working, unhealthy marriage. It's let me go out, let me live my life and align my time to my values. Let me model what a good relationship looks like. Let me show you what being present looks like. And so that's what I'm trying to do every day. And, I would love to say that I'm 100% successful at that, but I get distracted with my phone. I find myself doing all the things I'm sure, most dads feel guilty about. And I wish that I had the capacity to play 1,000 games of Candyland and read 17 books in a row without ever checking my phone. But I get distracted just like everybody else does. And so that's a primary battle, right? It's just trying to stay present and put the phone away and not be distracted by work or anything else when I'm with my kids.
How old are the kids?
So my son just turned 11, and I have a 5-year-old daughter, and they're amazing. They couldn't be further apart personality wise, and we can talk a little bit more about that if you like. But it's my greatest pleasure to be their dad.
I have a 14-year-old and a recently turned 9-year-old, so we have a good spread between the ages as well. Two yep. boys. Yeah, man, I hear what you're saying especially about being present. I really want to just stay with that for a second, because I think that's a huge challenge for a lot of guys. I mean, clearly. How do you take us into that a little bit more? When you are present, what is it that you're doing? What's working? How are you able to be present? And when you're not present, what's pulling you out?
I think of parenting like meditation in some ways, right? And
yeah.
so like naturally in a meditation practice, our mind is going to wander, right? Like this is, and people mistake meditation because they think that it's actually the ability to clear your mind and get focused. It's not. It's catching yourself when you're drifting and gently pulling yourself without
the art of 1,000 returns. Yeah,
exactly, right. And so I just look at parenting as a form of meditation of like I'm going to get bored playing Candyland. Like that game sucks. Like objectively, nobody likes Candyland. So how do I just, when I find myself being distracted, how do I return to present? Because the fact is, like, my daughter can play that game 1,000 times and she's having a blast. And all she cares about is me being there with her. And so, I look at it like, how can I give her that gift repeatedly? And then, like I said, without judgment, just gently return to the game when I find my mind wandering. But even if it's not the phone, right? It's being present without having my work to-do list going in the back of my mind. It's like trying to really intently focus on the kids. And what's so cool is in those moments, if I can create that presence, all of a sudden, she'll just blurt something out like, I had a really hard day at school, and then just like tell me about these things, and without any prompting, and I'm sure every dad out there can relate to this. If I ask my kids like, how was school or what happened today? Nothing, it's always nothing. And then,
right.
you really have to create that space for them to come to you with these things, and just watching the way their brain works. But so for me, it's really trying to create those moments where all of a sudden they're safe enough just to tell me and clue me into what's going on in their lives.
Safety is key. I was talking to somebody about this maybe a week or two ago about the things that a lot of dads or even parents, I mean, you could argue moms too, don't want to say about raising kids. And this conversation led me to share something I've probably said a couple times on this podcast, which is like, Ocean, my 9-year-old, loves playing army men. And for as long, it's not even a phase. Like this has been like a 5-year phase that he has been in when it comes to like setting up armies and battles. And we go into his room and we have all these little plastic figurines. And I'll sit down and start this where we're building our army, and we're creating a battle. We're using these wood blocks. And I'll set something up and he's like, you can't set it there because my guy's going to snipe you. There's this conversation going on, which is really cute and really awesome for me for a couple minutes.
Right.
And I actually have a lot of guilt for after like 7 minutes of doing it. I'm like, I'm kind of bored. Like, you're a fascinating child. I love you so deeply. I want you to be so happy. And I'm actually like judging myself for not being better at playing army men, for not being more creative. And I've had this show up in other areas too. Like when I put him to bed, he's like, tell me a story. And I'm like exhausted, beat down. He's like, can you make it up? And I'm sitting there going, this is the last thing I want to do is make up a story right now. And I have guilt for that. I'm like, if I were a good dad, if I were a better dad, if I was an excellent dad, I would come up with the best, most creative story in the world. So I have all these things that I've experienced some guilt with. Where do you feel that sense of guilt or shame or like, dude, I'm Mike Brown. I'm a successful, accomplished, well-read, evolved man. And yet here I am still struggling with this. Where does that show up for you?
Man, what a great question. And maybe let's just start with where does it not show up, right? Because I think that, a hallmark of a high achiever is being hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I share all of those tendencies of, judging and shame and guilt for not showing up even better. So I think first, let's just give ourselves credit for all the things that we do. And the fact that like even having this conversation right now puts us, I would guess, in the top 1% of dads, right? Like even just thinking about parenting intentionally is super important. But I mean, look, it's been a challenge. Like as much as I like to talk about how healthy the divorce was for me and ultimately creating space for my children to thrive, like it still affects them, right? They have to switch houses all the time. Like there's a lot of logistics and in some ways, and we never try to do this intentionally, but they kind of feel like they're stuck mediating between mom and dad. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that kind of comes with getting divorced, and it's not a rose garden by any means. And I really wish that I had a better relationship with my ex-wife, but there's certain things that I can control. I can control how I show up to that, but I can't control that relationship, right? Yeah. And so it's, there are so many places where I wish I could show up better. I wish I could figure that relationship out so it could be harmonious and we could model what a good co-parenting relationship looks like. But that's still something that I haven't figured out, and I'm trying every day. And that is, I mean, when I look at my life, like that is the biggest source of shame and stress and guilt is, the co-parenting relationship with my ex-wife. And, my kids feel that. I know they do. They know at pick up and drop off when, mom and dad aren't friendly with each other. Like they feel those things, and that creates a tremendous amount of guilt. And I can also let myself off the hook because I'm showing up the best I can. I'm doing my best to create harmony where I can, and ultimately, we'll see how it unfolds. But I can only control my controllables. So that's kind of where I'm at on that one.
It's so interesting. The other night, maybe 2 nights ago, I was angry at Tatiana, and my son Tiger, who's 14, was like, I didn't even say anything to him. It probably was just the look on my face, or how quickly I moved a door to open or close, and he's just
Right.
like, are you and mom fighting? Like he just picked up on it instantly.
I know.
And that's actually another one for me that I'm going, is my level of tension showing that relationships aren't perfect and and showing how to forgive and move on, or is it creating a toxic situation? I question that too at times. Who do you look to, Mike, in all the men that you're connected to, whether there are guys that are divorced or not divorced, but other dads, other people in relationships, who comes to mind when you think of an amazing father, an amazing family man, and why would their name pop into your mind?
Well, it's all of the other dads in my kind of friend group. There's four guys, so five families total, that all kind of live in the neighborhood and are entrepreneurs. And um, the reason I say all these guys is because we've created that intentionally. And so, and like my criteria for my friend group is they have to be in alignment with my values and the things that I care about, and they have to be dedicated to the path. They have to be, looking at improving themselves and trying to show up the best they can as a dad. And there are people in my life that ultimately, I believe all relationships have a ebb and flow, right? It's like sometimes you can be really close and you can drift apart, but like there are people that I otherwise deeply respect that I've drifted away from just because I don't appreciate the way that they show up for their kids. And that's a boundary that I have to set because I am so intentional with my energy that if you're going to be in my inner circle, I mean, I truly believe that you are the five people or the average of the five people you surround yourself with. So if that's the case, I've got to take that so seriously, and I got to take it seriously as a father and as a businessman. And, I don't hang out with people that denigrate their wives. Like if the guys get together for a beer and someone's going to talk shit about their wife, like that's not a relationship that I'm interested in pursuing. Right. So yeah, all of my best friends here in Colorado are guys that I tremendously respect as dads.
How do you see the difference? And maybe the answer is it's obvious. Like I can almost answer my own question, but like I'm curious, when a guy's venting, he's like, I'm really struggling with my wife. I'm really like, because I know I've wrestled with this, and I have had other men tell me this. It's like, I want to be honest with my buddies. I want to talk about what's going on in my marriage, but I don't want to throw my wife under the bus so that when my dudes hang out with her, see our families together, they're like, oh, there's the witch, who like, how do you reveal yourself and be honest without crapping on your partner, right?
Yeah.
Or playing the victim?
So two things, and you just nailed it. It's playing the victim. So these guys, this friend group, and I have Sauna Squad every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. We come, we do a workout, and then we do laps in the sauna and cold plunge. And this is our sacred space. And we've made commitments to the group to be truth seekers, meaning I'm going to bring my problems to this group. And what I'm asking for is where I have blind spots, to show me, to point out where, maybe I'm not thinking about all the angles, but it's all focused on me. So if I'm going to bring a problem in my relationship, it's going to be, where am I approaching this wrong? How can I show up differently to this? And if I want to vent about my partner, there's one place that's appropriate. That's to my therapist, right? If like, that's the only, it is never appropriate to vent about your partner, I think, to your friends, because ultimately right now you're asking them to choose sides, or you're diminishing their respect or view of your partner when it comes to buddies. So for me, I will never denigrate my partner, or at least do my best, right? I mean, obviously we're not perfect, but like I'm always going to speak highly of my partner and ask for my friends' advice on how I can show up better.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I mean, ultimately, you're speaking to why Front Row Dads was born, is this group of men that you're talking about that you've got in your life that's so rare. I can't say, I could probably count on one hand how many times a dude has said that he has what you have, that you created it, like, especially in your neighborhood. Like most people will go, hey, I love my neighbor, but it's not the person I'm going to most align with, which is why they go seek them out elsewhere. But I also want to just reflect back to you, Mike, that I think it's awesome that you're you're setting intentions with the group. Like you just said it, like this is truth seekers. I just wrote that down and I'm like, I love that, man.
Yeah. So
And
that's
you
actually from
have
Annie Duke.
criteria for friends. You have boundaries. You know what's a deal breaker. There's clarity. And I think that's actually one of the most important parts. You got to know who you are and what you want and be able to communicate it and ask for it and then hold that for other people as they hold it for you.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, and it's well received because I've worked very hard to create this in my life, and this is all really since 2019 when I got divorced. You know, I had a group and I had a marriage and I had all of the things. I had done all the things I was supposed to do. I'd sold a company, like created wealth, and I had a giant hole inside. Right. So for in many ways over the last 5 years, I've had to completely tear down and rebuild everything that I knew. So if I'm going to rebuild, it's going to be with that intention, because what was happening last time wasn't working. And I think it's an incredible gift to get to start over at 40. Like, I get to build my relationship with my wife now from a place of intention. And I know that if I don't treat the relationship with respect and put in the work, and like, it's gonna deteriorate over time, because that's what happened to my last one, right? And like, when I think about, my first marriage, like, it wasn't any one thing, right? It's just this chasm that grows over 16 years until now all of a sudden you're at a place where there's no way to repair that. So I have that roadmap. So now I get a chance to start over, to start fresh and build something intentional and go, hey, let's really think about how we want to show up for each other. Let's think about what our boundaries are, and create from a place of intention rather than just throwing against the wall and seeing what sticks, because that's not a solution.
How did you meet Claire?
I met her in baby bathwater, which
Oh,
is
wait a minute. I knew that. I knew that.
yeah,
That's so
yeah,
cool, man.
yeah. So we met on
That's
an
cool.
island, a private island off of Croatia, at an entrepreneur group, and I'm incredibly lucky because I met my equal, right? Like, we met in a place that's curated with founders that have to be doing seven figures or better, and so, immediately we have this shared experience. Like, she gets me, and um, she's one of the smartest people I've ever met in my entire life. And it's just been such a joy and a privilege to build with a true equal, and someone that I have such immense respect for, both on a professional and personal level.
That's so great to hear, man. Let's talk a bit about business for a second, because I think that while business isn't our primary mission in Front Row Dads, we're still family men with businesses. And we find a lot of joy and purpose. And, we want to keep leaning into that. There's guys listening to this that have solved the money problem. They've exited that's where they're at in their life. And there are other guys that are on their path, right, to financial freedom. Tell me about the Cliff Note version, or whatever you want, the fun version, the whatever, the rated R version of how did you make your first million?
Yeah. So I flew jets in the Navy. I was getting out in 2011, and I had lunch with, so my family, was lower middle class growing up. But we lived in a wealthy town, so we knew wealthy people. And I had lunch with my uncle and his business partner, who, were very wealthy. And I kind of told them about my plans after the Navy, and they said, no, you're going to come work for us. It's the best time in the history of the oil business to be in the oil business. So I moved back to my hometown, which is nowhere I ever wanted to live, and started working for them. And I was so lucky to have such incredible mentors. I stayed there for about 2 years and learned everything I could, and then went out and started my own firm with a good friend of mine who we flew together in combat. And they say, everything is 3 times harder and takes 3 times longer than you think. So we thought we were going to be making deals, in the first couple of months. And I got down to $2,000 in my checking account. And we hadn't made a single deal. And then this life-changing deal came across our desk. And we actually made $1 million on our first deal as a company. So it was, just this incredible rags to riches, overnight success, but after, putting in the work yeah, it was a crazy time.
Wow, man. Well, happy for you. Really happy for you. Let's talk a little bit about, let's go back to kids and money. And I think this maybe it's a sloppy transition and maybe it's brilliant. We'll see. But I've heard you talk about impact and legacy. So can you speak to that a little bit? Because I really think this is worth unpacking. And because we have a pillar called wealth and legacy, we often get asked the question, what do you mean by legacy? And I think you've shared some interesting thoughts around this. So just tell me what's on your heart as relates to those two and as it relates to your kids, of course.
Yeah, definitely. I take umbrage with the term legacy because I think that legacy by definition is an egocentric idea. This idea that I need to live on after I am not for this earth anymore. And I'm not interested in legacy. I'm interested in impact, right? I hope that what I create while I'm here will live on after me, but I don't ever need anybody to say my name associated with it. So I hope I leave this place better than I found it. And I would love some of my ideas about wealth to perpetuate, but I don't need the credit, right? I just want to have that impact. And I want to be of service while I'm here. And the people I care most about impacting are my kids. And, if that's all I ever do, that's enough for me. But, and then we have concentric circles, right? That go out and then it's the people closest to me and then the next layer and so on. But if I'm focused on one thing, right, which is being the best version of myself and showing up in the best way possible for my kids as a man that they can respect, like that's going to permeate through the broader circle and create that kind of impact where legacy now just takes care of itself. Like I don't need my name on the side of a building at a university because I donated $5 million. Like that's not interesting to me. What's interesting is how have I impacted the people that knew me and that were touched by my work.
My buddy Mike McCarthy says, your legacy is only as strong as your kids are equipped to carry it forward. Something to that effect. He says it much more beautifully than that. But this idea that legacy is in our children, that legacy is in the impact that you make with them. It's in the values. It's in how you demonstrated your life. And that's really, if there is a ripple or an indication of something that carries beyond you, it's probably through your children. Not that totally. They need to like be you, but that who you showed up as allowed them to maybe see parts of themselves, parts of their heritage, parts of their family lineage. I think that's a really beautiful thing. I remember somebody talking about legacy a while ago and they're like, tell me your grandfather's name. And they're like, tell me your great, do you ever hear this, right? Tell me your great grandfather's name. Tell me all about your great great grandfather. You're like, right.
I got
there you go. A couple generations. People will probably not even know your name, but I think it is interesting to think about the impact and what that ripples into, man. But I do think stripping the ego away is important. Like, do you really care that people remember your name 500 years from now? Is that really what matters? And the names even that we tell, I wonder how much of those stories are even true. And how much meaning is there to it? There might be notable names, but how much meaning is there? I'm not sure. It's interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one thing I like to ask people is like, when you walk by that library at your campus, do you look at the name and go, I wonder what that guy did?
Yeah. Let me go research that.
Probably not.
Maybe
right?
There's somebody that did. Like 100%.
Totally. But, I think you touched on something that is so critical as a gift that we can leave our kids, which is letting go of expectation and attachment. And this is something that I view as like the very central to my parenting philosophy, which is, we think we know what we want. We think we know what's going to make us happy. And then we project that on our kids and go, well, if you chase the things that I want, that I think are going to make me happy, then you'll necessarily be happy too. And number one, we don't actually know what we want or what's going to make us happy. So even imagining that we need to project that onto our kids and tell them what's going to make them happy is even crazier. And so, what I try to do for my kids is let them show up and learn how to think for themselves and learn what they want and learn what is authentically them, and support them in that journey. And I'll tell you how I learned that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, I have to be careful the way I phrase this, because when my son was born, like, I was sure that I was going to get a mini me. I was going to get a daredevil type A, like athlete, hard charger. And it quickly became apparent that my son and I were going to have differing personalities. And he was playing baseball or t-ball. He's probably 5 years old at this point, and he is always much more interested in picking grass than he is at paying attention to the baseball game, right? And he gets a hit. He's on second base, and he's just like zoning out and looking up at the stars. And the next kid gets a hit, and he just stands there. And all of a sudden, all the parents, all the other players, the coaches, they're all yelling at him like, run, 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 run. And he comes out of it, and he freaks out, and he runs right from second base into my arms in the stands. And he's just sobbing, right?
Oh, wow.
And now I got a choice to make, because every other parent in the stands is looking at me, and they're all kind of giving me the nod, like, you're going to get him back out there, right? Like, when we fall off the horse, we get back on the horse. Like, you're going to teach your son resilience. And so now I'm torn with this pressure of like, is this a teaching moment to like, overcome limitations? But I just looked down at my kid, and he hates baseball. He's sobbing for me. He doesn't want to be there. And I just picked him up and I walked out, and we went to the car, and we never went back to baseball again. Right? That's what allowing your kids to be a choice looks like. Like, he was there because I signed him up. This was never anything he chose. And we so overvalue sports in our society. And this is coming from a very competitive athlete, but we're making kids do 2-a-days at 10 years old. And the excuse is always like, well, where else are they going to learn teamwork? Where are they going to learn grit and determination? Like, hey, I just want to let you guys know there are a lot of places in life where we can learn grit, determination, and teamwork other than doing 2-a-days at sports at 10 years old, right? And so allowing my son to be who he is was one of the hardest things, but the best thing I've ever let go of. And now seeing what he's grown into is just so beautiful. And I'm so proud to be able to support him.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I have so Tiger, my 14-year-old, is very much into theater and acting and singing and dancing, and never really took to sports like somebody else might naturally. It just wasn't the thing. Like, he never even like gravitated towards kicking a ball or doing the things that would naturally they would be inclined to want to compete in that way. And so I just embraced the theater route. I just embraced this path for him. And I remember having several talks with him over the years about, I want you to develop as many muscles as you can. I don't need you to be an expert over here. I don't need you to be an expert over here, but I do want you to learn some of these things. I want you to learn to be athletic, even if you're not going to be like an athlete as your thing. I want you to be athletic. But there's a careful balance there, right? Because it's like, I don't need you to be a chef, but I need you to be able to cook yourself healthy foods to just take care of yourself in this world. I need you to learn how to take care of your body. I need you to learn I don't need you to be a banker or a finance expert, but I do want you to understand money. Yeah. And I think that what's really important is your kids don't have to be world class in everything. They don't have to be they just don't. They can find their path, and it doesn't have to be yours. It's so easy to say that and then actually just go show up to your family today and be like, yeah, I get it, but they better be entrepreneurs, and they better also like whatever it is that I like, because That's what I found over the years to be the most successful formula. It's understandable how it happens. It's
Right.
understandable. But I talk to guys that have 5, 6, 7 kids, and they're the best ones because they're like, dude, same house, same parents, say all this shit. And these kids are so different.
Yeah.
They're so different.
Yeah, my daughter is
There's
a
so much
savage
nature in
soccer
there.
player, by the way. She like if she doesn't score 3 goals in a game, she cries at halftime. So like,
Yeah.
so I got the mini me with the second child, and it's wild, right? I didn't do anything different.
Yeah. Oh, dude, Ocean lays out his clothes the night before on the floor. He's the military dude. He is super organized, super together. It's pretty remarkable.
Love it.
Hey, dude, this has been an awesome conversation. We could keep going on and on and on. I want to ask you these 4 kind of like what I'm calling this 1-minute wisdom. And it's just whatever comes to mind. It could be one sentence. It could be a small rant, whatever feels right for you. But like in your years on this earth, what would you want to say to all the guys out there if they're like, Mike, your best thoughts, your best advice, your best story, whatever it is on these 4 subjects? So I'll tee it up. You riff on whatever it is. We'll just shoot from the hip. So best advice, best story, best thoughts on parenting, maybe a summary of even what we talked about today, wherever you want to take this.
I mean, the core of my philosophy is sovereignty. So allowing the kid the decisions over his own body and what they do, or her own body, right? So you don't have to clean your plate. If you say I'm full, I take that at face value. That doesn't mean you get dessert, right? But like, I'm not going to sit there and force anything on that kid. So granting sovereignty, I think, is the most important thing we can do to allow them to actually feel like, am I full? Am I hungry? Rather than telling them. So granting sovereignty.
Best wisdom on a healthy relationship, a healthy marriage.
It always starts with you, right? If you are frustrated with your spouse, look at the things that you can control and how you're showing up to that. And I guarantee you the reason that you're upset or triggered is something that's in you and not something that they're doing. And the second part of that is one of the 4 agreements I love. Don't take it personally. Like we love to consider that someone must be doing something to us when they're probably not even considering us.
Dude, I'll make a quick comment and then we'll wrap. I know that I'm looking at the clock. I know we're up against the time, but dude, my Tatiana walked into the bathroom literally last night. She just had a great conversation with a friend of ours. And she goes, it hit me that I want you, speaking to me, I want you, Jon, to be able to hold space for me, that if I'm triggered, I want you to stay grounded so that I'm okay. I want that. But she goes, what I've also realized is that I don't want to ask that of you. If it happens to occur that you're grounded, as my husband and you can handle my shit, great. I'll consider that a bonus. But that her realization was she wanted to be responsible for her own emotional state, not lean on me, because that creates a little bit of a victim mentality of like, I need you to be okay so that I'm okay.
No.
And I thought that was really timely.
I mean, asking for what we want is a superpower in relationships.
Yeah.
And it's one of the hardest things that we can do.
Best wisdom on business.
Don't get distracted. People make finance so complicated, and there's a reason. It's because, they're probably trying to sell you something. And the fact is there's no one size fits all solution. And if you own a business, you have a vehicle to beat the market. So don't take dollars out of your primary business and then go throw it in a bunch of other, random bets, hoping that something works out. Reinvest in your primary business. That's the vehicle for creating outsized returns. Everything else should be used to hedge risk or increase your return on lifestyle. That's it.
And finally, wisdom on health.
So health for me has been a journey. I had a coach ask me a few years ago a question that just blew me wide open, which is, I know you know how to be fit, but do you know how to be healthy? And the answer at that time was no. I was training for Ironmans. I was working out 25, 30 hours a week. Like I could go 0 alcohol, strict diet, like hone myself into a machine, but it was black or white. It was either obsessive or it was off the rails, drinking, eating crap, whatever it is. And my journey has been finding a place of moderation, finding a place of Zen of like, what if I ride mountain bikes 3 days a week? And like, that's good enough to be fit. So I'm learning about what moderation looks like in regards to health.
All right, man. This has been great. Where do you guys track you down? And is there any particular guy that is a right fit for your coaching and your the offering that you have?
Yeah. So Unbreakable Wealth .com. You can head there and check out the programs. Basically, for any entrepreneurs who are, kind of crossing that 7-figure mark and above, we have ultra high net worth guys in the group and gals. And really, it's a 3-step process: examining our relationship to money, building a wealth plan that serves our values, and then creating a peer board of advisors to stay on track. Like, that's what we're doing to use our wealth to serve our values. And then, the other thing, follow me on Instagram, mbrown.co. I make videos. Sometimes they're good. And if not,
it's true. I can attest to that. I can attest to that. Mike, thanks for being here, man. Really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and your week. And I'm looking forward to building our friendship in the time ahead. So thank you. Yeah. Thanks again for the conversation.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.